This week on Quality Digest Live, we chat with Michelle Edwards of the Coordinate Metrology Society about CMSC 2017's Call for Papers.
Plus, understanding the 4 types of artificial intelligence. That and more when we come back.
This episode of Quality Digest Live is brought to you by Mitutoyo America. Whatever your metrology challenges, Mitutoyo supports you from start to finish.
And welcome back to Quality Digest Live for December 16th, 2016. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making the news in the world of quality. I'm Dirk Ducharme, Editor-in-Chief of Quality Digest.
Sam, that's right, and I'm Quality Digest publisher Mike Richmond. Is anything we thought about leadership true? Well, it's not only a provocative question, it's also the name of an article that we ran in Quality Digest on Wednesday, written by leadership trainer and author Susan Fowler. Now, the piece poses some challenging questions for anyone seeking meaningful business takeaways from what else, right? The recent presidential campaign. It seems like everybody's talking about that. Like many leadership gurus, Fowler has spent her entire career working with a basic set of assumptions about what it takes to motivate people and get them to follow you. First and foremost is the idea that successful leaders are humble. Now, this is a concept that's front and center in lean management methodology as well.
Sure.
Humble leadership, we know that that's a big part of doing that well too. But if we learned anything from the, I think I can say this, the shockingly successful candidacy of President-elect Trump, it's that perhaps a sense of humility maybe is a little overrated, right? I mean, maybe
apparently
that's what we're finding out. I mean, maybe empathy isn't seen as a favorable trait either. That's possible that the ability to apologize doesn't matter, and that the truth is passé. I mean, all those things might be true. I mean, any or all of those things, which were long considered really core competencies of potent and effective leaders, may just not matter, or they may matter less than the strength and confidence at all times that a leader like Trump demonstrates.
By the way, not that last little bit you said, the whole confidence thing seems to resonate more. I mean, we've seen that throughout leadership all along, is you can have some company that's completely floundering, and if the leader is strong and confident, people rally behind them. I mean, there's a lot to be said for that.
That's what this article is all about. There is a lot to be said for that. Now she doesn't claim to know if all that is true, and neither do I. But for both of us, and maybe many of you out there as well, considerations like this really have shaken our belief systems. I mean, I'll speak for myself here. That doesn't mean that I don't support our incoming president, because I do. I mean, I certainly do. It just means that things that I held to be true about leadership and leaders may be subject to a certain point to some revision. Now, for certain, I think we've all known people who have succeeded as leaders by embodying many of the same tendencies as our president-elect. In the past, I usually consider them as exceptions that would eventually kind of receive their comeuppance in some way. But to be honest, to tell you the truth, I mean, for many of them, in many cases, they just kind of continued to succeed year after year after year. At least they did within the business sphere, and I don't know so much about the personal lives, but in business, they continue to succeed. So maybe there is something to this idea that great leaders are those that primarily project overwhelming strength and never admit to a mistake. Maybe they serve as maybe like a lightning rod for the rest of us, and that creates a sense of comfort, like you mentioned just before, amongst the troops. Maybe. I mean, as I say, I don't know, but it sure makes her a thought-provoking topic, and for sure, anytime your belief systems are challenged, that's such a good thing, right? Because it provides an opportunity to see things from a different perspective. Well, we're going to be expanding on these issues and related ones towards the end of today's show, so we're going to kind of jump off on this and talk about something else. So come back to us about 2025 after, well, stick with us, but at 2025 after, we're going to be talking about this a little bit more. So
stick with us. Don't leave and then come back. That's right. All right. Actually tying into something else that we're going to have on the show today, we're going to have an interview later on that involves the Coordinate Metrology Society, which is an organization that focuses on large volume 3D measurement. But because of that, I thought the article, New Standard Helps Optical Trackers Follow Moving Objects Precisely, would tie in nicely. So if you use optical trackers or are involved in the development of them, this story is for you. NIST has created a new standard test method to evaluate how well an optical tracking system can define an object's position and orientation. This is known as its pose, with 6 degrees of freedom. If you're not familiar with the term, 6 degrees of freedom, that's up, down, right, left, forward and backward, as well as pitch, yaw, which is that way, and roll.
Right. Good job.
I had to rehearse that.
I like the hand movements.
See,
yeah. That's good.
That's 6 degrees of freedom.
Good job.
Optical tracking is used a lot in manufacturing, and basically the way it works is you've got 2 or more cameras that look at targets or maybe recognize an object, and using triangulation and a lot of fancy math, they can, using all these different cameras, they can triangulate in and identify where that object is in 3D space. And it's used in coordinate measurement systems, or it can be used for tracking the position of a robot arm in manufacturing. Either way, the more accurate these systems are, the better. But evaluating that accuracy has been an issue when it comes to dynamic measurements, measurements when something is moving. Static isn't such a big issue, but dynamic is. And to address this need, the standard ASTM E3064-16 recently approved a new international standard that provides a standard test method for evaluating the performance of optical tracking systems that measure in 6 degrees of freedom for not only static, but for the first time, dynamic objects. The test is conducted, this is kind of interesting, by having an evaluator walk 2 defined paths, one up and down the test area and the other from left to right, holding 2 different artifacts, very precise little objects that they carry around with them. Moving an artifact along the course orients it for both X, Y, and Z axes, while turning it 3 ways relative to the path provides the pitch, yaw, and roll measurements. Now, according to NIST, the new standard can evaluate the ability of optical tracking systems to locate things in 3D space with what they say is unprecedented accuracy. The margin of error is about 20 microns for assessing the static performance, and 0.2 millimeters or 200 microns for dynamic performance. So again, as new technologies come along, standards organizations like NIST and ASTM have to quickly play catch up so that there is a defined method and equipment and setup for ascertaining the accuracy of these products, which is really what we want in the long run, because that's what's good for the user. It's no good having a piece of equipment that a company can say, oh yeah, we're accurate to within such and such, using their test method. What you want is a test methodology that any piece of equipment can be tested to, and then the results really are comparable. You don't have one company using one test method, another company using test method. They all use the same, and those are traceable back to NIST.
I mean, what you said there was really interesting, this idea that these highly technical standards really have to be on their game now, because you have to stay ahead of the technology.
And they can't stay ahead of the and usually they aren't. The technology comes out, and then the standards organizations are running behind going, quick, how do we test this thing?
It's incredible. It's happening so fast these days. All right, thanks, Dirk. All right, well, one of the things that makes our working lives really enjoyable here at Quality Digest are the individuals, the companies, and the organizations that we partner with. Our readers, our contributors, our advertisers, they're all top-notch folks, and we couldn't do what we do without the support of all of them. So many thanks here at this holiday season to all of you for doing that. Now, there's one group with whom we have a really special relationship. I think we would agree with that.
Yep.
And that's the Coordinate Metrology Society. If you've listened to the show, if you've read the articles on our site, you know that we cover the happenings of this organization quite extensively. That's because the CMS is the place when it comes to the hardware, software, and peripherals necessary for large volume, close tolerance measurement. Now, if you're in sectors like aerospace, automotive, communications, energy, construction, or dozens of others, portable coordinate metrology solutions are your keys to quality. Each year in July, the leading lights in this field gather at the Coordinate Metrology Society's conference, the CMSC. Now, one of the highlights of each year's show is the presentation, as we know, of state-of-the-art white papers from those practicing the art of metrology at the highest levels in industry and academia. The best of these papers are collected twice a year in the Journal of the CMSC, which I'm proud to say we edit on behalf of the group. So, joining us today in our monthly CMSC Corner segment is Michelle Edwards. She's the Applications Engineering Manager for Farrow Technologies, as well as the Coordinate Metrology Society's Executive Committee member in charge of those aforementioned white paper presentations. So, Michelle, welcome to Quality Digest Live.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And glad to join you guys today.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for being with us as well. Well, let me ask you this. So we'll start with a little bit of background. What kind of projects typically are presented via white papers at the CMSC each year, and who are those presenters?
Well, there's a variety of presenters, anywhere from users to those who develop technology, coordinate measurement technology, and also those in academia, researchers at universities or at your lab organizations or your government organizations. All of them contribute to the white papers.
And about how many papers are generally presented?
Well, it would depend on the topics and the interests that we feel, how pertinent the papers are to our particular conference. But we generally try to stay around 24 papers, somewhere around there per year. It's sometimes a little more or a little less. The content and the quality being of interest to those attending our conference is what's most important to us when choosing the papers.
And I think, if memory serves, last year, 2016, we had 25 or 26, I think we had at CMSC 2016.
That's correct, 26.
26, right, okay. Well, now you're an application engineer yourself, Michelle. So when you've been to CMSC many years, what kind of projects presented at the show in the past have you generally found to be the most interesting, the most educational, the ones you got the most out of?
Well, for me, I have a wide variety of interests, but I tend to like the application-oriented ones. I like to see people applying products that I'm accustomed to in new and exciting ways, measuring either something that's complex that I hadn't considered, measuring with a laser tracker or with a scanner. I enjoy those. I also enjoy the academic ones where people are challenging accuracy and pushing the limits of accuracy and how quickly they can gather data and sort the data and decide what the data means and what it indicates. I find those personally to be quite interesting. I see that other people also enjoy those regarding GD&T in particular. Those tend to be well attended.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. You and I talked a long time ago, and I think you told me something about one of your personal projects that you did a long time ago had to do with, what, measuring chickens or something like that, if I remember right?
That's correct. I do like interesting measurement projects, and I was involved with one for measuring the repeatability of chicken joints, and it was again an academic setting. There were some people at Georgia Tech who were trying to predict an algorithm for where the joints of a chicken might be located based on its size, its weight, and the breeder. And they were surprisingly repeatable.
Well, I will say, as somebody who's, and Mike can attest to this, we've both been to the show many times, is even if you aren't deeply into the nuts and bolts of how 3D large volume 3D measurement equipment works, a lot of these are really interesting just for the projects themselves. Like you said, who would have thought that you would start measuring chickens, right? With some sort of scan or something like that. But there's historical preservation, archaeological stuff, a lot of really cool stuff. And so a lot of these papers and presentations are really interesting to read and really interesting to watch at the CMSC as well.
That's right. Well, Michelle, give us a little perspective here for people who might be out there interested in submitting a paper for presentation at CMSC 2017. So what's the process involved, and what are the deadlines? What is somebody who wants to maybe come to CMSC and present a paper, what do they need to know?
Well, the first thing we look for is an abstract of what you're interested in presenting. And the due date for that for the upcoming conference in July would be March the 10th this year. So March the 10th, we hope to have all the abstracts submitted. You can submit those via the website. If you go to CMSC's website, then you'll see the link to submit your abstract request. And then we look to see which ones are interesting, which ones are pertinent, which ones have the chance to make the cut. And through communications, then the deadlines are a little further down the line for you to expand on that abstract and submit that technical paper and then present the presentation material as well. Now, the conference itself is July 17th through the 21st this year. So you have some time in between.
And again, that website is www.cmsc.org, correct?
Correct, yes.
Great. So people can go out to www.cmsc.org and they can check out the application information and get their white paper in. And yeah, the show this year is in Park City, Utah. Great location. If you've ever been to Utah, beautiful place.
Bring your hiking shorts.
Yeah, that's right. It'll be nice. The weather will be nice this year in July, I'm sure, in Utah. So Michelle, thank you again for joining us today on CMSC Corner segment of Quality Digest Live, and we'll see you in July.
Great. See you then. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thanks, you.
Michelle.
Talk to you soon, Michelle.
All right.
Good stuff. Yeah, it's going to be a good show this year. I mean, Park City, it's always a good show. But I mean, we've had, let's be honest, we've had a few shows in Phoenix, in New Orleans in July that are a little warm. This one should be a little more comfortable. So that should be fun. Check it out.
All right. Well, did you know that there are 4 types of artificial intelligence?
Human is one.
Or you and me might count as 2 more, so I'm not sure. So there might be like 6. All right. Or, I don't know, between the 2 of us, maybe 1.
One and a half.
Half a brain each. All right. In his article, Understanding the 4 Types of AI, or Artificial Intelligence, Aaron Heinze says that a recent White House report preparing for the future of artificial intelligence misses the boat when it says that the next 20 years likely won't see machines, quote, exhibit broadly applicable intelligence comparable to or exceeding that of humans. The problem, says Heinze, is that the National Science and Technology Council, which prepared the report, only considered the boring kind of AI. The report focuses on what might be called mainstream AI tools, machine learning and deep learning. Think IBM's Deep Blue. I'm not sure if you remember Deep Blue, but Deep Blue has gone up against chess master Kasparov. I think Deep Blue was also used on the Jeopardy
show, right?
The Jeopardy show and so forth. This is basically the first type of AI, is the ability to look deep into the future. Look at all the possible moves on a chessboard, for example, and pick the best one based on what it sees now. So it, basically in a nutshell, just use the chess as an example, it sees the position of all the chessmen. And then it says, okay, what are all the possible moves, millions of them, that could take place going forward? Which one is the best one?
Right now. To make right now.
And then the next move, it does the same thing all over again. So it's never looking back, it's always looking forward.
What's interesting about that is that the chess master was able to compete. So the human brain really does the same thing. It actually, maybe because of creativity, does it better.
Well, and we'll get to why it does it better. Yeah. So then this is the first step. To be truly on the path to AI, computers need to be able to look back and remember what has come before that moment. Now let me pause right here. Look back not on your own perspective, but look back on what the other person, keep that in mind, what the other person has done in the past. This historical stuff is really important for moving forward, and that's something that AI needs. So the second type of AI, Heinze calls or involves limited memory. And we kind of have that right now. Autonomous cars, for instance. These keep track of where cars are around them and how fast they are moving, which involves observation over time, which is historical, right? So history, they keep historical track of signs and road curves and so forth, and where cars are. That allows them to make some decisions in the future, but they don't look back very far. It's kind of a limited memory. It looks back far enough to determine what it needs to know for now, which is good, but not good enough. And this is where we jump way forward to the third type of AI, which involves the theory of mind. Machines in this class not only form representations about the world, but also about other agents or entities in the world, says Heinze. The understanding that people and creatures and objects in the world can have thoughts and emotions that affect their own behavior. In other words, it's not all about me. There's other entities involved. And he's got this great quote. Heinze says, without understanding each other's motives and intentions, and without taking into account what somebody else knows about either me or the environment, working together is at best difficult and at worst impossible.
You know what's interesting about that, the analogy that comes to mind, it's almost like a toddler that doesn't understand that others have motivations as well. So as a toddler begins to get into the 3, the 4, the 5 age range, begins to understand that other agencies have motivations, the maturity of the mind becomes...
Strange that you. This is something we've talked. I'm not sure we'll get into it today, but the toddler reference is really a good example. These new types of AI systems will have to adjust their behavior based on understanding other people's feelings and expectations. And finally, the fourth type of AI is self-awareness. Not only is it not all about me, but there is a me. Mm-hmm. This is a subtle but important difference from the type 3 we just mentioned, being aware of others. And he gives an example. We assume someone honking behind us in traffic is angry or impatient because that's how we feel when we honk at others. Without a theory of the mind, we could not make those sorts of inferences. So Heinze says that in order to move forward with AI, we should focus our efforts toward understanding memory, learning, and the ability to base decisions on past experiences. This is an important step to understand human intelligence on its own, and it's critical if we want to design or involve machines that are more than exceptional at classifying what they see in front of them in the here and now.
If we want to.
Yeah, if we want to. Well, yeah, there is that.
The example of the honking horns is a good one because, for instance, cultural references come into this too.
Sure.
In Asia, for instance, it's not because people are angry or impatient. They're simply using it as a locator. They're saying,
right.
Here, you're there.
Right.
And I see you. So it's not at all about anger or any kind of impatience. And
right.
So the cultural overlays of this too come into play, and actually the human mind isn't that good at sifting through those in the moment because of emotion.
But AI might be.
Might be better.
Might be better because it recognizes, the idea, I think his point here is it recognizes that there are motivations
right.
on the part of other, and how do I deal with them? And it might be because it doesn't have emotions itself, mm-hmm. it might be able to sift through those cultural differences, knowing its context. Okay, I'm here in the United States, therefore a honking horn means this. Now I'm transplanted to China in my car, I'm running a car. Now I understand, because I understand the cultural difference, I understand a honking horn means different. Something that you and I couldn't do.
Right.
We would be transplanted to China and we're going, what are all these people honking at me for, right? Because we're emotionally involved, whereas AI wouldn't be.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
It's a fascinating technology because it touches on so much of what we do and who we are in the world, and there's a sense that it's inevitable. I don't know that it is. I certainly do think that there's a soul that isn't ever replicatable, but who knows? I mean, it's an amazing thing.
It is.
All right, thanks, Derek. All right. Well, earlier in the show, I chatted about an article from Susan Fowler about leadership and how the recent presidential election has thrown some doubt on long-standing assumptions about how leaders behave. Well, another article this week, questioningly titled "The End of Globalism," you see it right there, and written by Michael Witt of InSeed, also deals with changing perceptions in the wake of what's been a pretty topsy-turvy year, and seen not only in the context of the U.S. presidential campaign that I mentioned, but also demonstrated by the Brexit vote, right, back in the summer. Also was very unexpected result from that vote. Well, this holiday season, even more than usual, I personally am stumped by questions like these, which really they cut to the heart of where our world and our nation and our businesses are headed in 2017. I mean, we have a little time. We have a few minutes here on the show. So maybe I can throw some of these questions I'm having at you. I'm just going to throw them at you, Derek. I didn't prep you for this.
Yeah, okay. All right.
But I want to take a temperature on some of these possible answers because further to Witt's article, nationalism is a stronger force than globalism, if globalism was ever really stronger to begin with. Well, a corollary to the above is, can manufacturing jobs really be brought back to the United States? Those are kind of two questions there. I mean, the idea that nationalism is now more emergent than globalism, or it's overtaken globalism, if globalism ever really was prevalent. And tying into that is this idea that, well, maybe manufacturing jobs will come back to the United States if we're going to have more of an internal focused nationalist perspective. What do you think?
I don't buy it. I only if they are forced to, and I think, and forced to by regulation, edict, whatever you want to call it. To me, the best way to bring jobs back to any country is it's got to be driven by market. Manufacturers got to want to do it, which means, and there is some of this going on. I mean, as the playing field has raised in other parts of the world, let's say China, it is becoming less and less advantageous for some companies to do business in China. So what happens? Do they stay working there, losing money? No. They come back to the United States, perhaps, or to maybe a country that's less expensive. But eventually, it's market forces which are driving them to do what they do. When it becomes advantageous for a manufacturer to do business in the United States, they'll come back to the United States. Mm-hmm. So then that just raises the question, well, how do you do that? Well, maybe there's tax incentives or so on and so forth. But the way not to do it is to beat them over the head with a club.
Yeah.
That's not the way to do it.
Tariffs are a club. I mean, quite
and
frankly.
Tariffs are a club.
Yeah. But I mean, this idea that everybody around the world seems to be percolating with more of a nationalist idea. Every nation in the world has more of an inward has more of an inward focus than an outward focus. So this whole idea of free trade without tariffs and jobs and work and production flowing wherever it's the most inexpensive in the world, that may change if the moats come up around the world in all these countries.
Sure, but that's and I don't think there's anything wrong with tariffs if they're used to level the playing field, not beat somebody over the head to drag them kicking and screaming. You know what I'm saying? There's got to be, to me, I take more of a worldview. I'm going, if as you have more global trade, you raise the standard of living for people in China or people in Africa or people in Malaysia or whatever, as their standard of living goes up, the market slowly levels out and businesses start to move back or they reshore and so forth, but it takes time.
But that's a globalist perspective.
Sure.
I'm saying if we've reached the end of globalism.
I don't think we're reaching that end of globalism. Is there nationalism? Yeah. But I don't think that spills over unless you force in the name of nationalism, unless you force somebody kicking and screaming to bring their manufacturing back in the name of nationalism, you're just beating up on them. Yeah. They've got to come back. I don't think you're going to have manufacturers coming back to say, I'm going to come back to America just so I can lose money, but yay, right? They're not going to do that.
Right.
They may be forced to by nationalists, but that's not the way to do it.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you another question. This is also kind of in the news right now. This idea, it's very much in the news. This idea that the election was hacked in some way, or that the Russians or whomever, some bad actor, acquired information about the Democratic National Committee and that they released it. Well, but what it's brought up in my mind is this idea that how vulnerable are very highly and increasingly networked economic and societies. Programs. I mean, can criminals or foreign enemies, would they take advantage of our liabilities? And does that mean we need to rethink things like the Internet of Things? As we increasingly get more network devices that are in more critical systems, health systems, energy systems, national grids, things that really could be attacked are vulnerable. Are those vulnerabilities going to see us rolling back?
No.
Internet of Things?
No. Already what's being done is, everybody, every country is doing. The United States is big on it, is focusing on cybersecurity. Given that you're not going to roll back technology never rolls back. Technology.
That's not true.
On
the historical sphere of the world, it has rolled back. At times, wars, famines, disease.
It doesn't deliberately roll back.
Right.
It doesn't roll back on, there's a problem here. Let's stop moving forward. Right. There may be things that force it. I don't see cybercrime as that. Cybercrime is something that needs to be overcome, and it does need to be dealt with. But I don't see a shutdown on the Internet of Things. I don't see a shutdown on the Internet or anything like that. What a lot of time and energy, and let's face it, a lot of money is being focused on is how do we strengthen these things? How do we make IoT devices less hackable or unhackable? How do we protect our election system? How do we do, whatever? But they're not being turned off. Nobody has suggested that I've heard yet, let's just do away with these things. It's more like, how do we beef them up? How do we strengthen them so that they're protected, so that we continue moving forward with innovation without having to worry about, the grid being shut down.
Right. Well, those are good questions. I mean, there's just a few of them. I mean, there's a lot more. I certainly have. We're kind of out of time on today's show, but these are questions that are going to affect us as we turn into 2017, and change. Yeah, change is always in the air. And here at Quality Digest too, we're going to be continuing to develop our own programs and our evolution of our company in the new year. And right after the holidays, in fact, we're going to be bringing you some new looks in Quality Digest newsletter and our website at qualitydigest.com. That's going to include some additional op-eds from our team on a regular basis, so look out for that, and participate by commenting on what you read and or see on the show. We'd love your feedback. I'm actually going to be asking questions like this and not having you answer them, maybe answering them myself in the first op-ed we're going to run on Thursday after the new year on the 5th of January, because this is our last show of the year, so we're kind of teasing you for that a little bit, so look out for that after the new year.
All right.
Well, that's our show for the week. But before we go, of course, we want to thank our sponsor. Mitutoyo Corporation is the world's largest provider of measurement and inspection solutions, offering the most complete selection of machines, sensors, systems, and services, with a line encompassing CMMs, vision, form, and finish measuring machines, as well as precision tools and instruments, and metrology data management software. Mitutoyo's nationwide network of metrology centers and support operations provides application, calibration, service repair, and educational programs to ensure that their more than 6,000 metrology products will deliver measurement solutions for their customers. For more information, visit www.mitutoyo.com or click on the banner ad just below or just to the right of this video player screen.
That's it, and that is the end of our show. Thanks to Michelle Edwards from Faro and the CMSC for joining us this morning.
That's right.
This is the last show of the year. We're all going to go on vacation and enjoy the holidays. I hope you do too.
Good job, man. Good year, 2016.
There you go.
Another good one coming up in 2017.
There we go. Merry Christmas.
That's right.
Thanks to our staff and crew, Chris, Noah, and Chris, and
right.
the rest of the team here at Quality Digest. Great team.
Yes, great team.
Awesome working with them. So you all have a great holiday, and we will see you in January.
In 2017. Have a great year.
So long.
Bye.